Nepal is in the midst of major political and environmental transition. In addition to climate change, after 2015, the country has experienced a massive earthquake, the controversial promulgation of new constitution, which led to a 6 months long trade blockade along the Indian border, and COVID-19 pandemic. The research project Conflict, Balance and Environmental Change, investigating resource governance and legitimacy in transitional societies, was introduced to study how this turmoil affected ongoing transition in the state and society. It asked how local governments are dealing with everyday management of natural resources, mainly over water, forest, and pasture lands. We studied two countries, Nepal and Kenya, in collaboration with the Swedish University of Agricultural Science, South Asia Institute of Advanced Studies, Norwegian University of Life Sciences, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga University of Science and Technology, and the University of New South Wales. For Nepal's case, we studied the process of local elections and natural resource management before and after the election in four field sites: Barpak and Tsum in Gorkha District, Digdel and Kotehang in Khotang District. After the elections, these districts are no longer official levels of local government, although some institutions remain. In short, we witnessed the transition from districts to municipalities and provinces. We also organized climate dialogues in both Kathmandu and in the field locations with participations from a diverse range of expert groups, development workers, leaders, and local people. We are going to mainly focus on the work in Tsum in this film. We began with curiosity about how the changing environment and the dynamic political context were putting pressure on existing practices of resource governance. In Tsum, we found the emergence of new kinds of barriers blocking responses to climate change and natural resource management more widely. For example, we looked at what had been done in climate change adaptation programs. These programs assume that remote, local communities like Tsum lack knowledge, economic diversity, as well as the ability to anticipate the change. Yet, we know from earlier research that such assumptions are flawed. Tsum has a rich tradition of land governance that is tied to their religious leaders or lamas. It also has well-defined community rules over grazing and forest areas, many of which had already been somewhat disrupted by the imposition of conservation rules through the SLU Conservation Area project. Climate and political change are just the latest dynamics for local people to navigate within. Our research found there were four main institutions that all had a stake in governing responses to climate, albeit in very different ways. The newly elected ward leaders, lamas, non-celibate heads of religious institutions who traditionally govern land, AMCAP, and the Village Development Farmers Group. In many respects, the ward and municipality leaders fit the image of local people lacking knowledge about climate change. In interview, one of them explained their other priorities which meant the municipality had not dedicated a budget to climate change activities. He went on to say, I do not have much knowledge of climate change. If this is the case for me, how would you expect local people to have much knowledge? But for local people, these kinds of things are directly linked with agriculture, so we recognize why such programs are designed. Rather than setting their own agenda, local leaders defer to policies mandated either from the provincial government or international development agencies. Yet, the national and provincial governments were slower in getting established, meaning that posts were vacant and clear mandates from above were not forthcoming. This scenario caused a lot of ambiguity in terms of who had authority for governing resources. For Tsum, tension arose between the newly elected local government and the conservation agency over who could collect taxes from the available resources, such as forest, and most importantly over Yartsagunbu, a valuable caterpillar fungus that is sold as a medicinal herb and tourism tax collection. The elected local ward authority in Tsum even prepared and circulated a paper notice mentioning tax collection for 9 different resources. Under their new government powers, they had the right to do this. AMCAP, however, already claimed authority over those natural resources, such as forest, Yartsagunbu, sand, and stone. In part because of MCAF's international donor backing, their link to national level conservation efforts, and in part because they had already been governing these resources, the ward notice became simply a nominal piece of paper, not something that could be enforced. But the ward and MCAF are not the only institutions with a stake in local resources. Historically, the non-celebrate Lama institutions held a land document and mediated disputes that arose over communal as well as private lands. Their practices were rooted in both historical rights granted under Nepal's 19th and 20th century rulers, but also in local religious traditions. Particularly important is the practice of Shargya, or non-violence, a tradition which is strongly supported and closely linked to people's identities as Chumpa, or people of Tsum. This communal edict prevents the killing of any animals and has long been the key idea underpinning conservation. The lamas worked within this tradition, and while not always perfect, people abided by the decisions they made. It has indirectly led to the creation of resilient community over the years from a multitude of climate-induced natural disasters. For instance, Tsum went through huge famine in the past, but after the introduction of Shargya, there has not been any indication of famine nor any fear of it. The use of chemical pesticides as per Shargya is not allowed, helping to maintain the sustainable arable soil. Now, new emerging authorities to a certain extent have embraced this communal edict, but they failed to really understand the true subjectivity around it. This has created confusion and led to conflicts, both among different authorities as well as among people. In times most recently, after the formation of new local government, the improvement of the local economy was the key campaign. As part of it, many small businesses registered to business and thus paid tax to the local government. But these businesses totally contradicted with the existing Shargya ethos. Many restaurants and even few locals started purchasing meat items for business purpose. This in turn meant the business needed to pay fines since they violated the local communal law. But enforcement was left to traditional village institutions. The local government was nowhere to be seen in further resolving this scenario. While the ward, municipality and MCAF have either ignored climate change issues or subsumed them to other conservation agendas, local farmers in Tsum quietly went about responding to recent climate impacts. Winters have become drier, with less snow accumulation in high mountains, creating problems for agriculture as there is insufficient spring melt water for crops until the rains start. One of the local ward leaders had read a book on climate change written in Tibetan. She made the connection between the description of climate change and what was happening around water seasonality in Tsum. She brought her concerns to the local farmer group to discuss what they could do. In addition to talking about the pros and cons of repairing old irrigation canals, they also decided to hold a ritual by inviting revered monk to help bring in pattern seasonal rainfall and better harvest. The ward and various MCAP committees were peripherally involved in the ritual, but it was the village farmers' committee that directly took action. Yes, climate change is a significant challenge for Nepal, and state building is a continuous process. Yet it is also exciting to see how the developed new structure of Nepal will unfold the future. We believe that our focus on resource management and climate change help us to explore vital questions such as who becomes authorized to govern change, who is expected to make adjustments, and whose knowledge is considered the right knowledge for addressing the challenges of changing environment, who and what is left out as a result. These questions are crucial given that the environment is also changing quickly. How resource management will unfold in the future is therefore both about protecting the Himalayas and about ensuring success of the new federal system.
We are optimistic, even though the current trend suggests it's really not enough, at least seen from the perspective of the last 4 or 5 years of our research. We advocate for more attention on how the authority to govern change is contested, based on what kinds of claims and knowledges, and how more space can be opened up for collaboration with groups like the farmers in Tsum, who decided that the village committee, outside the structures of the formal state, was the right context for addressing climate change. The modern development-centric approach currently in use is not going to sustain a balance between state, society, and environment. We need to imagine new ways of collaboration, new ways to support state building, and new ways to think about a sustainable future.